Now look at what we're going to do with these fabrics. Oh, they're so pretty. Look at how well they go together. So we're going to start with a simple 4-patch. Then we're going to add some triangles, and then we're going to add some 2.5-inch strips. I can't wait to show you what we're making. Let me get started, and I'll bring this back with my 4-patch intact, and then we get to play with triangles. And the first step to creating my 4-patch is to sew the first 2 blocks together. And I just run a seam, and you can see I did a chain stitch so it holds everything in place. I know right where they're going to go, and when I fold them, I get the seam exactly where I want it to be. But the first thing I'm going to do is finger press to the darker fabric. And the reason that's important is to get our seams to nest. And you can see how the seam allowances going in the opposite direction just make it that much easier. And when you flip your fabric over, you're going to get a really nice seam where they join. So let me go ahead and sew this on, and I'll show you what comes next. With my 4-patch all sewn and I have it pressed, you can see we have a nice nested seam, and those corners come together beautifully. And this is where we start. Now, the first thing we're going to do is add a triangle to each side. And you can probably guess what the next step will be, but let's take care of this first. When sewing the first triangle on, we're going to put it doesn't matter which side, just start on one side or another. And you want this to be centered. The easiest way to center this is put that point right on the seam. And then what we're going to do is come in and pin this. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, this was a square, and we cut it diagonally. So this is a bias seam. And I find if that bias seam is on top as we sew, you're going to have less chance of it stretching on you. So put a pin right here where the seam is. That's your halfway point. It's also going to keep this aligned so that you don't have to worry about this corner moving, because we're going to want to pull this open, and that corner we want to be straight across. And with the seam sewn, we're just going to flip it over and press it just like I did this side. So we have 2 sides attached. Now we're going to put the other 2. But a couple things I want you to notice is that we have these dog ears, and those can be quite annoying when you're putting multiple triangles in the same corner, because that's going to make it be really thick. And what we want to be able to do is trim that off. So just grab a ruler and line it up with this straight edge here. Now these triangles are sized just a little bit larger than what we actually need. And the reason for that is to make sure we don't have to cut our square short. We want that seam allowance to come right up to the 1/4 inch. So when we have our pieces joined, we'll still have that 1/4 inch in the corner. And that's really important when you put these together. So here we are. All right, now we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to put this one this way and this one this way. And then now we're going to sew this side, and that's going to flip over, and we'll trim that and this as well. And then we just keep going. I'll be right back. Both seams are sewn, and I press them open so they lay nice and flat. And what I want to show you here is we have a square, and by adding a triangle on each side, we have made a square on point. Now, this is not ultimately where we're going, but let's say you had a bunch of 4x4s like this, or 4-patches, and you wanted to put them in a row, but in the shape of a diamond so that they're turned 90 degrees. This is a great way to do that. It's a fun way to make a scrappy quilt, and this is the first step. But we are going to take it one step more. This is on point. We're going to make a square in a square, which is also called an economy block. And that's because this was first made during the Depression of the 1930s, when everything was just so difficult to find, to get. All we had is what was left over, and putting those to use was important to families because they just did not have much. And so, you know, our four women, I'm not sure what to call them, our quilters in the day, created this block, and it's still an incredibly popular way to start a quilt. You'll see a lot of quilts in the center will have this on point, either 4-patch or just an on point square, and then you can add even further. So I'm going to start. Now, I am going to put these in the same place. So see, these are my first two that I added, and I can tell because these seams go on top of them. So I kind of want to have this go in the same spot. But before I do that, there's a couple things. First, I want to trim off these dog ears. But the other thing is, you see, I want to make sure that I have a 1/4 inch at each of my side seams, because when I sew this next one on, I want that seam to come right down to the top of this point. I do not want to cut that point off, but I want my seam to come just on this side of it. So you can see there's my 1/4 inch line right there, and you can see my point. So I want my seam to be on this side of the point. And the way I'm going to be able to tell, let's see, yeah, here we go, is we can look on the back, because we'll be sewing from the back. And when we sew, can you see that spot right there where the two seams cross? We want our needle to be just on that inside of that little point, because if we sew right here, then when we turn this over, our point will be intact and the new piece will be right next to it, and it'll look beautiful. So the other thing I need to do is trim this, and I want to make sure it measures 9 inches. I should be pretty darn close. And so I'm going to put my corners all in place. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, down here, everything is right where I need it. And again, make sure you're not trimming off your seam allowances. And then up here, it's a little long on one side. And so I'm going to trim this off. I'm going to take that little tiny bit, and you can see there's very little. It's just not even a 1/16 of an inch. And so I'll turn it the other way so I can get the other two dog ears off. It just makes it cleaner to sew when you don't have them on there. So I'm going 9. This is actually a 12.5-inch ruler, which is really good for a number of different size blocks. Okay, we have 9-inch here and here. And do that, and we're good to go. Okay, so you know where we're heading here. We're going to make this just a little bit bigger. And what I'm going to do is put these on each side, like this. Now, just as before, we'll start here. I'm just going to move this over a little so we can get it in the center. We're going to put these on the side, then we'll come back and we'll put this on the top and then on the bottom. Now, this is what we call a square in a square. I don't know if I can turn this, or the economy block. And so this is basically how the block will lay out. So let me get this sewn, and then I'll be right back, and we'll get to the next step, because we have one more, but it's not a full round. We're going to do something special with these. And after finishing this block, just like I did with the yellow, this one is trimmed down, and I put these two sides on. we are making a mega supersized hot pad. And I love having these in the middle of the table because they're good size. You can put a big casserole on it. There's a lot you can do. You can also just leave it there to be pretty. But I like the fact that it's going to be heat resistant. So it's currently measuring, this block here is 12.5 inches. But from side to side, it's 24 inches. So this is ultimately going to finish at 16 by 24. So we're not going any farther than these corners. Now, what we're going to use are some strips. So I am going to first take my straight strips and run it across the top and the bottom. And I'm doing that, let me find my other piece, so that I can have my 16 inches. Remember, this is 12, and these are 2.5, so 12 plus 2 is 14 and 16. But then I'm going to come back and continue around, and it's just going to be so pretty. And then we'll go out to the corners. And that's it. This is such a simple way to do it. I know I'm not giving you dimensions, and there are some dimensions out there you can find, but I needed this to fit the size of what I wanted this particular hot pad to measure. And so I will get the dimensions to you. It's just right now I'm figuring it as I go, and I don't want to give you numbers that will either waste fabric or you'll come up short. So the first thing, let me just show you the back so you can see. I put these on the side, and again, remember we talked about lining up these corners on the back, and you can see how I stitched just to the seam side of that point. And then we end up with two very beautiful points that meet right up to that pretty pink fabric. Okay, so the thing I'm going to do now is just put these two on, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to add this on to the side. So there we are. We're coming right along. This is looking awesome. I can't wait to see it finished. So I'm putting my first row across the top. So we have these two side corners reaching right and left, but above we need that extra 2 inches here and down on the other end. So I have a 2.5 inch strip, and I sewed it just like before, where we're watching for the point of our triangle, and you see how nice it looks right there. So we didn't lose it. Now I go ahead and I leave a little bit of fabric so we can see, because if we cut that off, that's a lot right there in this seam, and it can be kind of lumpy and bumpy. This way it's going to lay nice and flat, and that's just a personal preference for you. Now when we trim this, what I'm going to do is I have on my ruler a 45-degree line, and I want that line to go along my seam because I'm cutting a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to have this line right here, and it's going to line up, and I'm just going to slide it. Let's see. It's not exactly going to work for me. Let's see if I can do it this way. This one, this one, this one. Okay, here's the one I can do. So you'll have it in two places, and generally one will work, the other won't. So see, when I had this here, I was getting too much over to the side, but by lining this up along the straight seam, which opposes the seam that we're trimming from, now I get right here, and I'm right here, and I can get this right there, and cut that one off. And now I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I will run my ruler, go this way, and I'm going to run it along this edge, and I'm going to have this line right along the strip that I sewed, and I'm going to cut this one. So now when I sew my next strip, I have a nice straight line to follow. And you do want to make sure you keep that 1/4 inch right here. Let's see, where am I? That 1/4 inch we got, that 1/4 inch, okay, over here. So we have one here and we have one here. Let me bring the picture so you can see a bit more. Here we go. So I wanted to show you this part up front. This was the first one, and then I come in and I cut the sides. Now, the next step is I have my first one here, and I'm going to put a strip along each of these points. So again, we're going to trim this off, and I'm going to line this line up with that seam and make sure that I have my ruler straight with this seam. That way we're going to keep everything nice and square. All right, just like that. And this is cut off right even with the edge. And let's see what we can do here. And let's see, I want to go this way. Okay, see, I get it turned. There it is. I always have to turn it a time or two to get it in the right direction. Okay, we're straight on this line, we're straight there, and we're going to cut right across there. Okay, so now I have this beautiful corner, and I wanted these pieces to overlap that center because the next pieces, the strips that I'm going to add, will be on top of these. That way it all sort of steps out and it makes it uniform. Now what I'm going to do, I'll take the pieces that I have, and I need to cut some more strips, but I'm going to sew this on. But let me show you, when you have this piece right here, we're going to want to make sure that when this opens, we have it sewn all the way up. For example, if we just bring this, let me bring you in again. If we just bring this to the corner like that, and then when we go to sew it, you see it's not coming all the way up. Do you see that? We have a bit of a gap there, and that's going to make it difficult to sew the next rows on. So we want to lay this down and have at least 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch so that when we're done, we'll have enough that we can trim off and keep our shape intact. So I need to go cut some strips, put some pieces together, and I'm going to do on this side what we did up here. And then I'll come back and I'll show you how we add these pieces onto the side. You see how easy this is. Everything's in nice big chunky pieces. There's not a lot of little fussy stuff. Yes, we have corners, but the corners aren't matching up to anything. It's not like we have corners meeting corners. That's where it's the trickiest. Once you get this part down, you'll be able to do half square triangles so easily. But this is a great way to get started on it if you haven't before, or if you're just not confident enough. So let me get the rest of this pulled together, and I'll show you where we are. Now you can get a look at what this is going to be. We did this side, I showed you already. I do want to show you right here, I had to join 2 pieces of my strips because the pieces that I had were on the shorter side. I didn't have enough long ones for over here. And that one's trimmed across the top. But what I wanted to show you here is I was afraid I wasn't going to have enough fabric. And I needed, just this much. So what I did is I used one of the corners I cut off on the other pieces, and I just laid this corner in right here, and it was just exactly how much I needed. Actually extra, because now I'm going to trim that excess off. Let's see, we're going to put this right here on this line and line it up on the side, and then I'll just trim this off. And there we are. Now see, these little things, and I did, because I had some multiple pieces, I picked one that was, kind of the same color, so it wouldn't stand out. And on this one where I joined, see, I can't even find it, this one, I made sure it was mostly white to white, as opposed to putting a big red flower next to the white. I just like doing that. I think it, kind of blends things well, better anyways that way. And so now what I'm going to do is put a couple strips on each corner, And I think I'm going to stay kind of with the same color pattern. I thought about doing a different one on each corner, but that just might be, I don't know, too much maybe. I think I'm going to go 1 and 2, and that may get me to my final corner. I may need to do a third row. We'll see once I get there. And we're not going to do any more on this side, so I'll only bring pieces down to this point because it's not going to be any wider than what we have here. This is 24 and a half. Okay, you know, I'm talking through this. I'm talking me through it as well as you. And I appreciate you following along. There, you know, once I get this all figured in the numbers and how it's going to work, I'll definitely get this written up for you. And we'll do a tutorial by sometime next week so you can look at it online. And there'll be a printable one too. I'm sure I can do both. So, all right, let me get my corners in, and then I'm going to show you how to make a hot pad. This is going well. All right, the last bit of trimming and putting the corners on. We are just about there. So you see, this is the one where I used the piece that had been cut off one of the corners, and I just sort of found a place where I could use it and tucked it in, and now all I need to do is trim that off and come up here and trim this piece. And, you know, just as a precaution to make sure you're doing sort of the right thing, look at these lines, and if you can line the angles up, and then that's just an affirmation that you're on the right track. Now, let me do this one. I have one more. While we're here, let's get all this done, because then it's going to be time to put things together and get it quilted. Are you going to be with me? You going to be able to hang in that long? Hopefully it won't take too long. This is a small piece. Well, what am I doing here? And it shouldn't take long at all. All right. Now, the other thing I can't remember is whether or not I showed you about this edge. So when I sewed the white strips on, I didn't cut it right off here because there's the seam allowance on the underside, and we want to keep that in place. So I left enough of this white strip to meet that corner when I trimmed it off. You can see how that's even. So that's about a 1/2 inch, and I did that on both sides. So I have plenty of room to put my binding on. Now, when it comes to this, I found something that worked out really well because I was going to use a strip, and I thought, well, why cut a whole strip when I can just snowball it? And this one got a little crooked, but it's straight on this side, and that's what matters. So I folded it in half like this, and what I did is I pressed it so I can see that seam, and I put it on here so that fold is at least 1/4 of an inch below here. So by pulling this corner a little this way and a little that way, make sure it's 1/4 of an inch down, and then from this side I sewed a 1/4 inch seam right across here. And then now look. Oh my goodness. Whoops, let me get on the right side. And do make sure you unfold this before you cut. I would hate to go to all that trouble and lose that corner. Okay. And here we are. Look at that. I love it. And so now I'm just going to get it straight here. Put it on that line. And put it over here. Let's see, just about like that. And that's the extent of it. So I have that corner. Let's see, oh, I have this corner. I just need to trim this. We'll do this one. And again, I'm doing it from this. Let's see, where's my seam allowance? There it is. From this side. And cut that off. So I still have these little bits of corners, and that'll go in my mini half-square triangle pile to be dealt with later. And then I'll press this, and then I'll take care of that. So I have a yellow one here. I have another yellow block for this corner, and then I did a light pink here and a dark pink here. So once this is all set, we're ready to put it together. We're almost there. Well, we're down to the final steps, and I have my backing. It was just a few inches too short, so I put a couple 2-inch blue strips. Oh my gosh, you can tell it's getting late, right? I wasn't sure which color to use, but then this isn't in the backing, so I used the blue, and it looks beautiful. It brings out all the blues that are in here. So I'm going to turn that over, and this is the bottom, and this is the top. I mean, you can just barely see both edges, but this is about the best I can do. All right, now I'm going to spray. Usually I put something down underneath, but I don't have anything right now to do that with. So what I'm going to do is I will just put my batting over there to catch any overspray, and I'm just going to kind of spray the middle. So we put our backing down, and then we put our batting, and I just want to make sure I have it centered, which I did not, and there we go. All right, that's what I love about the spray based. It goes on easy, and it's so nice to brush it out. And so now I'm going to put the Insulbright. Now this is a really interesting product. It's a batting, but it has metallic threads. I think it's aluminum threads that go through. You can kind of see them punched. Now, there are two different sides, but there's no right or wrong. It can go either way. Now, the other thing I want you to see is how desperate I was in putting my pieces together. So remember, I don't have my full assortment of stuff here. I'm using with just what I have on hand, and I had to piece this. So I pieced it here, and I had to put 2 pieces here, and then I had to put a piece there, but I got it, and that's okay. That's not going to affect how this works. It's still going to be fine. And you see the stitch I used. I've done this in a number of videos where it's the 3-stitch zigzag, and it works beautiful, and it holds up so well. You butt it close to side by side, and there's no seam. There's no ridge. It's perfect. Okay, I didn't put anything down to adhere that, did I? Let's do that just to hold everything in place. Okay, so we have that. Now, we also have to put another piece of batting. When you use Insulbright, you need batting on, whoops, that's the wrong side, on both sides of the Insulbright, because the batting will absorb any steam. If you don't do that, then that steam will leak out onto your table, your furniture, your tablecloth, whatever happens to be there. But this way, the batting will absorb any steam, and this is going to keep the steam from going through to the underside. And by putting it on both sides, it makes it reversible. And I kind of like that. All right, now layer number 5. Look at this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Here it is. And look at that. Didn't that come out pretty? I like all these colors. And I think it looks wonderful. So I will spray base this, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to quilt this. I'm thinking, because we have these angles, and then I can go this way, and they'll kind of crisscross on the sides. What do you think? It's a small piece, so it's going to go quickly. All right, you convinced me. That's exactly what I want to do. And I just want to make sure everything is covered from all sides. I can move that up here a little bit. Okay, we're ready to go. let me just put a little spray base over here, and I'm going to start quilting, and I'll be back and show you how this looks. All right. See you in a few. Well, what do you think? It's quilted, it's bound. I think it's adorable and thick, 5 layers. I barely got this 2.5-inch binding around, but it seems to be okay. It's holding well. And next time, I wrote a note to make my binding a little wider, just so it'll be easier to use. But basically all I did was kind of quilt the center squares, and then you can see I just did some long lines around the outside. And it just sort of, we got lines here and here and here, and then I did some in the middle. I think it looks wonderful, and I like the check binding. That's a lot of fun. Okay, there we are. The economy block. I love it. A square and a square. I'm going to be doing more of this. I really like that a lot, and I like this. Don't you love a great hot pad? Oh my goodness, and they're nice and big. And if you wanted to, you could put the little ties in the corner, and then it'll be a casserole carrier as well. But I just love it like this. I think it's wonderful. Thanks so much for following along and keeping up with me through this. And it's quite late into the night, but I had to get it done. I just didn't want to leave it. And now it's time for bed. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, wonderful rest of your week. And it is a holiday weekend, at least it is here for me. And I hope you all enjoy and have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.